landfill, and they should consider turning waste into energy. I so submit. Mr. Louis Long. Housing is an important area for different terms of government. In a policy address, the chief executive said that resolving housing problem is a key area of work. He would increase the pace, quantity, efficiency, and quality of housing. That will be a multi-pronged approach to resolve these problems. This is a novel approach. The government proposes the light public housing and a cap on waiting time for public housing. And these should be well received by the public. The government said that they would proceed at full steam the development of the Northern Metropolis. Plot ratio will be increased to 6.5. This will greatly increase usable areas. This will further allay pressure on land and housing shortage. In a policy address, there is also the proposal of lowering the threshold for compulsory sale and to speed up redevelopment of urban areas. These will also increase housing supply and improve living environment for residents. We all look forward to these initiatives. On private housing, the chief executive gave us an assurance that in the coming 5 years there will be sufficient land for private housing to meet the projection in the long-term housing strategy. Housing supply in the private sector will become stable. However, when it comes to demand-side management measures, that is the cooling measures, in a policy address, there is only a mention that for talents coming to work in Hong Kong after they have met all the requirements, they may apply for a refund of the extra stamp duty paid for properties purchased. But that is only part of the measures to attract talent, not part of measures regarding housing. During the consultation session, a number of parties have expressed their concern about cooling measures. The policy address did not touch on cooling measures. I find that regrettable. On the 20th of October, there was the question and answer session by the chief executive. In answer to my question, the chief executive said that the original intention and elements when these cooling measures were put in place should be looked at to see if they are still there. So I asked the government to explain the original. Well, I have gone through all the information available, and this is the information I found. The government said that the demand-side management is an extraordinary measure in an extraordinary time. The purpose of these measures is to quash speculative demand. These measures are there to avoid property prices increasing excessively. These were to stabilize the property market and to make sure that the local needs are made. And on top of that, this will reduce risk from the external environment. The government wanted to use cooling measures to buy time so that the supply could catch up. In 2012, December, the financial secretary said at the launch of buyer stamp duty, said that this is an extraordinary measure in an extraordinary time when demand and supply reach an equilibrium. We would consider withdrawing these measures. On the 19th of November 2010, when the first cooling measure was announced, he said that should there be a change in interest rate and an outflow of capital, property prices would change. This would cause a huge loss of asset owners, and which in turn affect people's livelihood. Every year, when the government introduced bills relating to these cooling measures, they said that they are extraordinary measures in an extraordinary time. But when it comes to extraordinary times, it's about quantitative easing measures by the U.S. And as a result, a large amount of hot money flow into Hong Kong, causing the prices of properties to increase excessively. But compared to what happens now, the U.S. Federal Reserve has increased interest rates 6 times. And there is a total increase of 3.75%, which reaches the highest level since 2018. There is a continuous climb in interest rate. And in Hong Kong, we see relevant interest rates being increased. Last Friday, the government announced the economic report of the third quarter of this year. For GDP for consecutive 3 quarters, we have recorded a negative growth. It means that per year we see a drop of a GDP by 4.5%. So whether it's local or external economic conditions, times have changed.
真係不可同日而語。
For residential property market, according to statistics published in November, in the first 10 months of this year, there were less than 40,000 sale and purchase agreement contracts signed, down by close to 40% in the same period last year. And the number of registrations also dropped to 3,000. That's the lowest in a 10-year period. As for the transaction amount, it's also a record low in the past 6 years. So that's a drop of 40%. According to IRD's latest statistics, the 3 stamp duties, only 130 such transactions were recorded, down by 60%, involving $159 million. And on month is a drastic drop of 66%. So that's a record low since July 2014 in terms of the number of transactions and the amounts involved. Comparing to the $4.57 billion of stamp duty collected at the peak of the introduction of the 3 stamp duties, it shows very clearly that spectators are no longer participating in the local housing market. In other words, we're able to strike a demand-supply balance. And according to the policy address, the chief executive said that the government would take a leading role in land supply, and no fewer than 72,000 flats to be produced according to the land available. And according to the latest projection provided in the annual progress report of the long-term housing strategy, the supply of first-hand residential unit in the coming 5 years will be 95,000 flats. That's 23,000 per year. In the past 10 years, for the first-hand residential flats, this is an increase of 40%. As we can see, after years of dedicated efforts, we have been able to strike a balance between demands and supply of land and housing. So the next point is that basically the government has met its target. However, are the cooling measures helping people in Hong Kong to meet the accommodation needs with tightening mortgage lending requirements and interest hikes? People are unable to afford the high interest rates and high property prices. In other words, the cooling measures are actually undermining the housing ladder, and it runs contrary to what President Xi said on the 1st of July. That is, Hong Kong SAR government should help meet people's aspirations for a better life and for better housing. I reckon that the government has adopted an incorrect understanding of the property market, and hence the government has not withdrawn the cooling measures. But the fact speaks for itself. For the past 3 quarters, we have recorded negative GDP growth, and it is an imminent task to relax these measures. Earlier, the Financial Secretary stressed that the government has no intention to withdraw the cooling measures. The property prices only dropped by 7.5%, and that's a far cry from the 30% drop from its peak previously. But I stress that with the introduction of cooling measures is not to regulate market prices. In 2011, the then Secretary for Transport and Housing explained that the stamp duties are introduced as a short-term measure to curb short-term speculative activities. It is not a means to regulate housing market prices. I hope the government will not withdraw the cooling measures only when we're in the economic downturn, because by then we will be in the doldrums. And by then, in Central, we will not be buying lunch boxes. We will hardly be able to afford lunch. Well, the Financial Secretary once said that the measures would be withdrawn when we have capital outflow and interest hikes, etc. We have met all these conditions, and yet he hasn't changed his mind. The imminent task for the government is to maintain economic stability, provide relief to the shocks to the financial market. The cooling measures have completed their historic mission. When we have a demand-supply balance of the housing market, it's time to say goodbye to the cooling measures. So I appeal to the government to honor this promise as soon as possible by withdrawing the cooling measures to keep the market vibrant again and to rebuild the housing ladder. Mr. Deputy, finally, may I conclude today's submission with the following. We have high winds and choppy waters. We have high interest rates and property market corrections. Speculators are no longer to be seen. So when the demand-supply situation improves, it's time to withdraw the measures, the cooling measures. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. President Xi, for the 1st of July, mentioned that the greatest livelihood problem facing Hong Kong people is that Hong Kong people would like to live in a better, bigger flat, and that is also the vision that I put forward when I first assumed office as a member of this council 10 years ago. This year's policy address has incorporated many suggestions put forward by my industry. For example, the chief executive puts forward the objective of enhancing speed, quantity, quality, and efficiency of housing production. The quality of housing will also be improved. The time for turning sites into spade-ready sites will be shortened, and a lot of efforts will be put in taking forward the Northern Metropolis strategy. Plot ratio review will be conducted, and there will also be a dedicated team set up to expedite approval of building plans of private developers. And also, land premium charged at standard rate will be reviewed. I have made various suggestions on these matters before, and now they've been incorporated in the policy address. But as I mentioned in the previous 2 sessions, whether or not these initiatives can be implemented with precision depends on the support of civil servants and the sector's collaboration. For example, on the adoption of MIC to expedite housing production, the prerequisite is that there should be sufficient space to carry out the procedures. According to the policy address, sites will be provided in the North New Territories for the production and storage of components. This is supported by myself and my industry, but we have questions about when the sites will be available and how rent is to be calculated and the tenancy of the sites. These details have to be ironed out. At the moment, the government leases sites to relevant industries for their operation. And they are important in supporting the government's latest initiative and supporting the sustainable operation of the industries. But according to the current policy, the sites the tenancy will last only for 2 to 3 years or 7 years at the maximum. In the long run, it undermines the competitiveness of Hong Kong. I hope the government will do more to identify more suitable sites and lease the sites to the relevant industries. And according to the policy address, BIM will also be adopted, and there is a roadmap and timetable for adopting BIM in building plan submission. In order to achieve that, more support should be provided to SMEs. At the moment, the focus is on investing in hardware, then that's the initial phase. But more should be done in terms of support for SMEs to train their staff, for them to be familiar with BIM, and there should be more university places in this regard. I hope the government will not repeat the mistake relating to the shortage of healthcare professionals. In terms of cases in which accidents happen because of departure from the approved building plans, these cases mostly related to infrastructure, but recently we have seen more cases relating to the construction of buildings. I wonder if it has to do with the prevailing practice of the lowest bidder wins in the government's tendering exercises, as the government puts forward enhancement of efficiency and speed, so on and so forth. Will quality and safety be compromised for the sake of enhancing speed and efficiency? Next, I'd like to turn to transport infrastructure. The policy address refers to a number of new projects. It is hoped that under the infrastructure-led approach to create development capacity, we can maximize land creation, and I support this initiative. However, for infrastructural studies, usually it takes 3 to 5 years for the feasibility study to be completed, and meanwhile, the applications for private projects will be put on hold pending the approval of the infrastructure project. Well, although because of the new road and railway projects, very often, even if the application reaches the stage of negotiating land premium and lease modification, the department will just stop the process for a long time. I hope this can be rectified. Next, Mr. Chan Siu Hong. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I'd like to speak on land and housing supply and other policies relating to achieving carbon neutrality and transport mobility, etc. I am glad to see that the key areas are being addressed in the policy address. Obstacles will be removed to improve and to increase housing and land supply. The government has shown resolve and commitment in putting a cap on the average waiting time for public housing. Light public housing will also be introduced. It shows the government is resorting to every means with a view to resolving housing issue, and I support that. And I understand that smart construction methods will be adopted, including MIC as well as the BIM model, to increase the speed of housing production. However, there are also different obstacles facing the use of smart construction, because for MIC we need a large site for assembly of components, and in the Northern Metropolis, the government will be providing a site for this purpose.
The government should devote more resources to training so that more workers in the construction industry understand how this is done. And there should be a policy to support the relevant industries that would provide the relevant smart construction technology. Mr. Deputy, let me now turn to transport policy. A number of trunk roads and railway projects will be launched in the coming years, including Sha Tin bypass, the Central Railway link. The government has been determined to improve the transport infrastructure in the NT and the road network there, so as to improve the connectivity between NT and the urban area. This is not just good for the commuters, this is also good for economic development. But when it comes to transport infrastructure, we all have this impression that the speed of these programs has become slower and slower. The advanced preparation would take 3 to 5 years, and construction would take another 5 years. So we have to wait for more than 10 years before we get the infrastructure delivered. The government should find a way to improve the speed and the quantity. And also on labor welfare, apart from minimum wage, we must not forget occupational safety. The CE has been saying that he's very concerned about occupational safety and health, but I'm not disappointed that there are only a few sentences on this subject. Paragraph 99 talks about the government's determination to investigate incidents and to implement the improvement measures, and also through the OSH build penalties will increase. Well, occupational safety and health is not about pursuing who's responsible after the incident has happened. More importantly, that we should try to build a better safety culture, delineate the responsibility of various stakeholders so that they understand that enhancing industrial safety is the responsibility of all people. And the government should also introduce the CDM so that in the design stage, the safety base design will be adopted. And that is to say, at the design stage, full consideration will be given to the safety during the construction and at the commissioning stage, so as to reduce accidents. And the industry should be encouraged to adopt AI technology to monitor safety on the site. Overall, all in all, prevention is better than cure. We should prevent incidents and injuries. Next, I want to talk about carbon neutrality. The government wants to promote green transport, waste reduction, and green technology and waste reduction. All these are supported by me. We should increase the pace with which we reduce carbon emission. We have less than 30 years to achieve carbon neutrality. We should have a overall cooperation framework with the Pt2 on waste reduction so that we will not lose the opportunities. And also, by 2030, we'll no longer rely on landfills to deal with municipal waste, and there will be more waste-to-energy facilities constructed. Mr. President, good measures must be implemented quickly. Otherwise, they are just a pie in the sky for the people. The government should roll up its sleeve and work hard now so that it can really actually achieve what it has promised to deliver. I'm full confident in the new term of government, so I submit. Dr. Dick Chi-yuen, Mr. Deputy, the policy has spent quite a few paragraphs on social welfare, elderly care, more elderly centers, and the like. These are all very good, but we are only catching up. Welfare service development is suffering from lack of a comprehensive blueprint and planning. Secretary, we used to have 5-year welfare service development programs, which will provide a roadmap for detailed planning on welfare services. We have youth development blueprint. We have primary health care blueprint. Why don't we have elderly services development blueprint and welfare services the program blueprint? Let me give you an example. The policy says that 6,200 care home places for the elderly will be provided. But we know there are 30,000 people on the waiting list. They have to wait for 3 years. There's still a big gap between supply and demand. As for the care homes for the disabled, they have a waiting time of 10 years ahead. So we can just reluctantly accept what is proposed in the policy address. We have more than 1 million people in poverty in Hong Kong. It's because in the past the government did not address poverty problems very seriously, and therefore we have more and more of the people in poverty, and the figures keep growing. This policy address talk about providing targeted solution for poverty alleviation. At first, we thought that would be in line with the nation's measures to help the people in poverty. But it only mentioned the Smart Team program to help young people in poverty with a quota of 2,000. There are no other promises. There's no KPI. So I will give 0 mark for this part of the measures. The policy address talk about reforming the poverty alleviation committee. It has been in work for years, but they have not been able to achieve much. After a lot of discussion, we should look at how poverty can be addressed in Hong Kong. We should have KPIs and care roadmap to show people that we are determined to solve this problem. Mr. Deputy, we have an aging community. Those who are over 60 accounts for 13% in 2011. It has risen to 20% in 2021. 20% of our people are over the age of 60. We are proceeding to a super aging community, and all over the years we only got piecemeal solutions. This time the policy address talk about increasing the places for the elderly services, more quotas for community care services. These are fragmented measures. We don't have an overall strategy to tackle the aging problem of our community. I hope the Elderly Commission will come up with a white paper to consult the community so that we can have measures for the short, medium, and long term. In 2013, the government introduced a new scheme for special scheme for welfare services using the private land. Many organizations have proposed 20 proposals, which would have increased 20,000 places for the elderly and people with disabilities. But after 9 years since the launch of the special scheme, only a small number has been completed. All the rest are still being processed by one department after another, and sometimes some of the procedures have to be repeated. So these NGOs are all very disappointed. I have confidence in the secretary's ability, but I have no confidence in the bureaucracy of various departments. So I hope the secretary can tell us how you can solve this deep-rooted problem. I don't doubt your resolve, but you must tell us how you can overcome the barrier so that we can improve the speed and the efficiency of the project. I hope the secretary can launch 5 projects within this year so that we can see they are really moving forward. Mr. Luk Chung Hong, Mr. Deputy, this part we are talking about addressing people's concerns and difficulties. Now, let me give you some example difficulties. First of all, transport and anti-west, anti-north, and east. They are not as remote as people imagine. There are many people living in those districts going to Hong Kong Island for work. It's been the case for years. The policy address talks about the beyond 2030 trunk road and railway projects. There are 3 roads and 3 railway projects. They are very good. But the problem is, how are they going to be implemented? So don't give us something, a pie in the sky. The 2014 railway strategy study talk about a monorail for East Kowloon. People thought that it would be implemented soon, but still today the project is under investigation. And for other infrastructure projects, or which people would very much like to have, we like to see them implemented. For example, Area 137 in Changkano, there will be reclamation, a new tunnel. But why don't you build another Island East tunnel, Cross Harbour Tunnel? If we don't have another Cross Harbour Tunnel, East Kowloon, Eastern Harbour Crossing will be very congested. It's already congested. The Chung Kwan Nam Tin Tunnel is going to be commissioned. So planning for roads and tunnels should be forward-looking, and we should always go for infrastructure first before other development. We have the Northern Loop, Gutong stations, Chengyi to Lantau Road, the new link. The government should do everything to compress the completion timetable. People have been waiting for them for too long. We should streamline the procedure so that we can improve the speed and the efficiency. And another aspect is manpower for infrastructure projects. That is very important. Last time I talked about the shortage of manpower in various industries, drivers, mechanics for railway operation. That's why we have so many MTR X incidents. And MTR is not willing to pay good wages, and people have to work for 2 or 3 jobs, and they get the temporary workers to take the place of those who have left. So transport service is people-oriented, so we need to conduct good studies before we have good transport planning. And we should not be reactive and then try to import labor when you ultimately discover that you don't have sufficient supply of manpower. And this is labor importation is very unfair to local workforce. And for e-vehicles, charging has been a problem. We have a new project. There were only 35 spaces under this new project, but there's so many restricted areas. And sometimes if you want to provide 500 spaces for a housing estate with 2,000 spaces, and ultimately it will fall through. So you cannot provide the e-charging facilities for e-vehicles for such a large housing estate. So you must be flexible. And secondly, well, it's difficult to get a football pitch. Even if I want to play soccer or other recreational facilities, it's very difficult to get things done. We have to get the proposals approved by the government, followed by studies, and then the actual construction. It would take some 20 years to get things done. I think for Qingyi, at the end of this year, we are going to see something new commissioned. But altogether, it will take 20 years. And also for people who are trying to sell their venues to other hirers.
明知邊人係
And staff of the LCSD know full well who are the people who try to resell the venues they have booked. Everyone can see who these people are. You could simply ban them. The government should be more proactive to ensure that those who are genuine users of venues will be able to use these venues. There are 31 initiatives proposed. I hope that these projects will be implemented at a higher pace. There are vacant sites such as those in the service reservoirs. If operators would like to run these sites at service reservoirs and turn them into venues, maybe assistance will be given to them to make it happen. Mr. Ben Chan. Regarding earnestly addressing people's concern and difficulties in daily life, I see sincerity and determination on the part of the government. On housing, there is the light public housing. It is a good idea. It takes time to build public housing. Using light public housing, housing supply in the interim will be increased. This time of government expresses concern about for those living in inadequate housing. And indeed, those living in subdivided units are living in appalling conditions. But what about those living in caged homes? These people don't live in the urban area. They live on a hillside. They're subject to the elements, running the risk of being affected when there is a flood or landslide. Not everyone's eligible to apply for public housing, but it doesn't mean that they are well off. They might have an income that is higher than the threshold by 100. Where can they go? They have to live in squatter homes. They are not eligible for public housing. That means they are not eligible for light public housing. And there is no way for them to improve their living environment. They live in squatter homes. And that's a problem faced by a lot of people in different districts. Well, the policy regarding squatter home was set down on the 1st of June 1982. The policy is that you cannot change the size of the squatter home. If there is any change in the size of the squatter home, then you are required to demolish the entire home. If you suffer from a flood and you've changed the material of your home from, say, tin or timber to brick, then they can make you demolish your home, and then you will become homeless. I hope that the government will give allowance to those living in squatter homes. If these homes are demolished, then the people will be forced to live in caged homes. If they can expand their home slightly without affecting others, why don't you allow them? The focus should be on new squatter homes or those who are there for a profit. People who've been living in the same squatter homes for decades, if there are any changes to the material or size of the homes, just let them be. Now I would like to talk about transport. When I was a district councillor, I was talking about Tuen Mun Trunk Road, Tuen Mun Chuen Wan Railway, to make commuters travel easier. And there is also another railway line from Tuen Mun Chuen Wan and Sha Tin. We heard about the recent MTR accident. Railway network is very important because if one line suffers from a disruption in service, then there are other lines making up for the disruption, for the shortfall in service. Well, if the government doesn't link the Chuen Wan line, when they link up the East Rail Line with the West Rail Line, that is rather disappointing. I hope that there will be a station built to link the railway line with the Chuen Wan line. This central link will connect all the different railway lines. I myself and Edward Lau proposes a central line. The function of this central line is to link all the existing railway lines. The idea is similar to the one floated by the government, save and except the Chuen Wan line. So I do hope that the central line will link up all the existing railway lines. Should there be another accident in one of the lines, there will be other lines supporting the service. I do hope that infrastructure will be brought forward. Those living in the Northern Metropolis will have supporting infrastructure when they move in. They don't have to worry about basic facilities. And people who are already living there won't worry about new population intake affecting them. I so submit. Mr. Nguyen Yu, this is John Lee's first policy address. It shows determination to address people's concern and also shows that he is pragmatic. It shows his vision. I support this motion of thanks. We face a grave challenge of brain drain. In the past 2 years, there is an exodus of 140,000 people. So retaining talent is a key area in the policy address. A number of measures have been put in place. Say, for example, there is the various measures. Say, for example, Top Talent Pass scheme, the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents, as well as the talents service unit. When it comes to innovation and technology, we need a huge pool of talent. Our education system cannot train enough manpower to meet the needs. We do need more measures to attract talents and manpower to increase our competitiveness. A number of other industries face the problem of recruitment difficulties. In the policy address, there is the relaxation of imported workers for residential care homes, and there will be a review of manpower shortage in construction sector. There is also the manpower projection. I do agree that there is a serious problem of manpower mismatch. In the short run, we do have a need to import workers. But for the long term, in the upcoming projection, the government should take into account the different factors based on the projected figure, formulate short, medium, long-term manpower development policies for different industries. A list should be compiled to ensure that priority is given to local manpower, imported workers should be allowed. Training, when planning training courses in tertiary education, there should be manpower shortage should be taken into account. Vocational training is also another area to address manpower shortage and mismatch. Well, in the policy address, a number of measures have been launched when it comes to vocational training. There is the internship, the higher use of vocational training, and a number of other measures. We can see the importance attached to this by the government. We need professionals and trained manpower for different industries, so we need to have dedicated training courses for them. And as to how we can make it happen, there can be internship program put in place. Well, there is also subsidy provided for enterprises to hire these people. The government can also encourage cooperation and launch various apprentice programs for vocational training. Apprentices are allowed to attend classes and work at the same time. There is manpower shortage in a number of industries. For some major industries, they have set up their own academies. Say, for example, the Academy for CLP, and there is one for the MTR. The government should consider subsidizing young people to join these academies set up by major corporations. Mr. John Lee said that he would invite the statutory minimum wage committee to conduct a review. It has caused a controversy. Previously, the minimum wage committee has made a number of decisions, but given current difficulties we face, for example, inflation, high unemployment rate, the use of minimum wage has been undermined. More and more people ask for a review of the mechanism of minimum wage. I've always said that median figure of the prices, nominal wage should be considered as well. There should be more flexibility. The transparency of the mechanism should be improved. Previously, the Secretary for Labor and Welfare said that he would consider introducing a formula in the calculation. It shows that the government is willing to listen. That's commendable. An annual review should also be introduced. We have an aging population. There is an increasing demand for care workers. In the policy address, there is no mention about foreign domestic helpers. The problem, say for example, discontinued contracts and problems with employment agencies have not been addressed. A lot of employers said that it's down to luck whether you get a good foreign domestic helper. The quality of agencies is also another concern. Pricing seems to be random and there is no regulation. The government should do something in this regard, say for example, scoring system for agencies and a committee to monitor the quality of agencies. The government should also address the issues of foreign domestic helpers changing employers too frequently. And other issues should be addressed as well. There are over 700,000 people living in Kwun Tong. It's a district with the highest density. Well, over 400,000 people work in the district, and it will go beyond 500,000 in a very short time. Transport and traffic is a serious problem in Kowloon East. A lot of people think that enhancing the road and railway network is the most immediate solution.
The government has proposed an elevated trackless monorail system to provide expedient commuting ways of commuting for Chiwon-san residents. I welcome this proposal because this will help relieve traffic congestions and interface problems in Kwun Tong. A few days ago, I started a questionnaire survey to gauge Kwun Tong residents' view on the system. Apart from Chiwon-san and Shentin Estates, we have residents in Kochil Road and in Yaotong and facing the same problem. They find it difficult to get the proper transport up the hill, and I believe that we should enhance connectivity. My proposal is to combine the monorail project and the Kwun Tong extension line project so that they share the same interchange station, and then we can have connectivity all the way to Pt2 and then Richland Gardens Cruise Terminal in Kai Tak, and also the business district in Kwun Tong, so that we can make it convenient for residents living at a higher level in Kwun Tong. We can also at the same time enhance connectivity within Kwun Tong, and by doing so we can fulfill the objective of energizing Kowloon East. Professor Lau Chi Pang. Mr. Deputy, I'd like to speak on land and housing. Land supply is the key to increasing land and housing supply, and it's a matter of legacy. We must find a way out as we learn more about the history. The British government waged the Opium War in the 18th century. As a result, Hong Kong and Kowloon were ceded to the UK, and then in 1899, the new territories were leased to the British government. This is a vast piece of land without a title, so it is called the new territories. In terms of land use, Hong Kong and Kowloon were regarded as the urban area, so high-density developments were allowed. In the new territories, only low-density developments were allowed. 1997 marks the end of this era, and Hong Kong became one city. It's not a piece of land partly ceded to the UK and partly leased to the UK. It's been many years since reunification. We still have a separate land approval mechanism for the two places. I mean, we have a separate mechanism for the Hong Kong and Macau as an urban area, and for the new territories, only low-density development is allowed, and that accounts for the shortage of land here. 150 years ago, the British colonial government had only one thing in mind, that is to separate Hong Kong and Kowloon with the new territories. But in the future, Hong Kong will have a close link with the Greater Bay Area cities, and Cheklapkok Airport in Lantau serves as the connecting point with the rest of the world. If we continue to adopt the same method that we adopted 100 years ago to regulate land matters, there will be no way out. The policy address has put forward effective measures to address people's livelihood issues. I appreciate that, but I hope the government will take a further step to comprehensively consider planning in Hong Kong and scrap this separated land administration mechanism so as to create a better living environment for the people. On protecting the environment, the policy address sets out a clear timetable for achieving carbon neutrality. And I support it. It is the responsibility of all mankind to protect the environment. As we damage the environment, it's time for us to clean it up. The Hong Kong government has done a lot over the years, especially in terms of nature conservation. However, in terms of waste management, it seems that Hong Kong is lagging behind. At least as far as the current situation is concerned, waste is either sent to landfills or exported elsewhere. We do not have the capacity to dispose of the waste ourselves. Presidency mentioned that lush mountains and lucid waters are invaluable assets. And under this spirit, the new generation of Chinese citizens all embrace the environment and nature, and the achievement is apparent. We now have a new chapter as we enter a new era. I hope that these environmental protection policies can be taken to a higher level so as to fulfill the objective of managing waste ourselves and so that we can all feel proud about protecting the environment together. I so submit. Mr. Michael Tian. Mr. President, over the years I have been striving for enacting legislation on mandatory reporting mechanism for child abuse cases. All along my suggestion was not heeded, but all of a sudden the government decided to enact this piece of legislation. And in this year's policy address, it is said that by the first half of next year, a bill will be tabled into the Council on the mandatory reporting mechanism for child abuse cases. So I would say that this is a milestone. On the 14th of November, this Monday, at the panel on welfare meeting, there was an item discussing this legislative proposal. I put forward a number of suggestions to the Secretary, including increasing the level of penalty for non-compliant persons. That is to raise the maximum period of imprisonment from 3 months to 5 to 6 months. At the time, the Secretary said that one must not only consider non-compliance or non-reporting, one must also have regard to similar serious cases in other pieces of legislation, such as trafficking in dangerous drugs and withholding information, and that the penalty levels should be aligned. And the Secretary also said at the same meeting that for professionals, they care very much about their reputation, and even 1 day of imprisonment will be deterrent enough. Well, the remarks of the Secretary actually sparked a lot of debate in the community. I think that this is unintentional, but even if it's just a slip, I would like the Secretary to respond to the following. In future, when the government enacts legislation to regulate different matters, such as a reporting mechanism for child abuse, for elderly abuse, etc., does it mean that the government will have regard to the background on the background of the offenders or not? Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, Mr. President. It's been 25 years since reunification of Hong Kong to the motherland. We benefit from the best institutional arrangements of one country, two systems, and we have been playing a very important role in connecting the mainland to the rest of the world. And yet, in the development process, a lot of conflicts and problems have emerged, especially some related to people's livelihood. So the Hong Kong government was join hands with the community in solving these issues and maintaining harmony in the society. I support the Policy Address 2022 delivered by the Chief Executive on the 19th of October 2022, and I also support the motion moved by Ms. Starry LEE. I need to first of all thank the government and the Chief Executive and his team for their effort. In preparing the policy address, the whole government reached out to different sectors of the community to understand their aspirations. The government officials also visited different communities to tap the pulse of the community and understand the day-to-day problems facing ordinary citizens. And the government also strives to take on board as many as possible suggestions on improving people's livelihood. So I'd like to take this occasion to thank the government for taking on board many suggestions put forward by the New People's Party to improve people's livelihood and other policy suggestions. For example, about the Northern Metropolis, next year the government will set up a dedicated department to take forward the development of the Northern Metropolis. I hope that a blueprint and a action plan can be formulated as quickly as possible so as to activate this engine that will drive the I&T development in the northern area. The strategy will also help relieve housing shortage. More will be done to provide more elderly care services, as well as the provision of other welfare facilities in great shortage earlier, as well as plugging other gaps. The government has also taken on board our party's suggestions on housing, children's protection, achieving neutrality, waste management, and the development of agriculture and fisheries industry. This is the Chief Executive's maiden policy address, and I feel that there is great dedication shown by the Chief Executive himself and his team in order to wage a battle against the livelihood problems facing the people so as to take forward developments to benefit the people. As the title suggests, that is charting a brighter tomorrow for Hong Kong. I see that this is a forward-looking blueprint for the development of Hong Kong. I think many people will share the same view. They will also be given a boost in the confidence in the government. And in this debate session, we debate on livelihood matters close to our heart, and another key word is harmony, how we maintain harmony in society. We always talk about harmony, but in order to achieve harmony, we need to have proper government policies that could meet people's aspiration for a better life. In other words, we need to catch up and not fall behind. And I understand that there are many new initiatives on resolving housing issues, such as light public housing, putting a cap on the waiting time for public housing, and also implementing a well-being design for new PRH projects, and taking a multi-pronged approach to enhance efficiency, speed, quality, and quantity of housing. And only when there is sufficient housing can we meet people's aspirations for home ownership, for better accommodation, and these are the basic elements in people's aspirations for a better life. I hope that the government will strive to meet the KPIs as quickly as possible. And on this front, I hope that the government will step up its effort in studying redevelopment proposals in urban areas. And I understand in the policy address that they will expedite the proposal on the consolidating land titles and taking forward redevelopment proposals. I hope work will be expedited so that we work faster on redeveloping old districts, and without compromising the interests of minority owners, technology can be deployed in different redevelopment proposals so as to maximize the use of land and to improve people's living environment. On this note, when we improve the hardware, apart from improving infrastructure and other supporting facilities, we also need to be mindful about other community facilities. We need to continue to include more elements in the community facilities to improve people's quality of living. Many people are glad to learn about the Round the Island Trail, which will connect the waterfront promenades. And on weekend bazaars, the preliminary response has been positive. It will bring more energy into the communities concerned, and I hope that the government will take a systematic approach in organizing bazaars regularly.
And I would like to make a suggestion here. I understand many people have various aspirations for leisure facilities. According to a survey, we have some 200 spaces underneath different flyovers. The government should try to put them to good use. We should make the best use of such a space. I understand that in the Energizing Kowloon East initiative, there is a program on how to make the best use of a space under a flyover. I hope the government can conduct a comprehensive study on all such spaces so that people can use them for various activities, do some physical exercises, skateboarding, playing cricket, etc., so that we can facilitate sports activities of various sorts in the community. And I also support the measures in the policy address on children protection. We have uncovered a number of child abuse cases of those children in care homes. I'm saddened by such incidents. The government should embark on public education initiative to disseminate the right information and also to inform people how to report such cases. In the preface on the National Children Protection Program, the first sentence says something about the children being our future, and therefore we must attach great importance to children's protection, and then we should set out the basic principles and objectives in child protection so that children will enjoy a safe environment and also the protection of the law and the family. And there should be a major objective set for different aspects in promoting welfare of children. And there should be proposals for capacity building and a well-established system to monitor the effectiveness of such welfare programs. There should be more family-friendly policies, and there should be more support measures which are children-centered, so that every child would be able to grow up in a healthy environment. And now let me turn to environmental issues. On environmental protection or the promotion of a green community, we should attach sufficient importance to all these issues. And there was a motion on promoting the green transformation of our economy. I supported it, and we should we should devote our more efforts to look at green construction methods so that Hong Kong can be transformed into a green city. The government has also proposed many measures to protect the environment, and relevant KPIs have been set, and also the cover of the policy address is in the color of green. So really, apart from harmony, the government is also mindful of the importance of green development. I have high hopes for the government to do a good job in this aspect. We should redouble our efforts to go for green transformation, to protect our environment, and also to reduce waste, and as well as the introduction of green finance that would enhance our sustainability in the long term, so that Hong Kong will become a greener city with a better environment. So I submit. Mr. Guo Wai Keung. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to say that I support the motion of thanks. Since the reunification after 20-odd years, and after so many political bickering and turmoil, Hong Kong has been transformed from a city which is burdened by the political turmoil, and now we are in the post-violent protest era. This is a critical period. I hope that the CE and his team would show us the determination to do concrete things for Hong Kong and achieve concrete results. And then we expect to see a marked improvement to our livelihood. Whether the government can really achieve the intended results, that would depend on how the government carry out its work. The policy address talks about a number of measures such as enhancing the quality and quantity of the housing production program. There will be 30,000 units under the light public housing program, so as to put a stop to the rising waiting time for public housing. And the goal is to reduce the waiting time to 4.5 years so that people don't have to wait for so long. This is more positive than past practice. This is a hallmark of a responsible government. Apart from the production of new PRH, we should also look at the aging problem of the existing public rental housing stock. Redeveloping old estates can improve supply, improve the environment for the tenants, and we can also increase the development density of the land. For a hectare, we can provide 1,300 units. If we redevelop the 14 old housing estates, we can have additionally 36,000 units. Take Wafu Estate as an example. In 2014, it was listed in the policy address for redevelopment, but the whole process will take 20 years to complete. And the first batch of tenants to be moved out would start to do so in 2026. So it would be 13 years after the first time it was proposed. Some have become the middle-aged people when the proposal was announced that they were teenagers. And when I talked to them recently, they were rather disappointed, as if this is not their business. So we have to consider various factors. For example, the potential for higher development, or whether there is a rehousing tenant for the existing tenants, or the structure is problematic or not. Sometimes the old estate may fulfill the one or two factors. For example, if structure is going to be problematic, although it's not dangerous at the moment. But is the living environment really satisfactory? You can ask the tenants every year they would have to do the paintwork again and again, but very heavily, very quickly the paint would come off. And if you are not careful, the paint in the kitchen would drop to your food. Can we address the problem or reinstate the old estate through the housing authorities repair program? According to some engineers and technicians, this is not possible because you cannot really return the old estate to its normal previous state. For example, for the Minghua mentioned, the development also take more than 10 years, but the end result would be 1.6 times the number of flats. The question is, how long would it take? Well, we all want to get prepared in good time instead of being reactive. So we don't want to be pressured by the unexpected problem and find ourselves with no solutions. I hope the housing authority will get prepared for these redevelopment needs. Next, Mr. President, I would like to talk about labor issues. The policy address mentioned a few points, such as labor importation, admission of talent, and the abolition of the offsetting of MPF contributions, and also the review on the minimum wage setting mechanism. They are in response to the suggestions made by the FTU. First of all, on attracting talent, this is a global trend. Various countries would like to attract talents, but at the same time, we should upgrade the skills of local people, the local workforce. Otherwise, young people in Hong Kong would think that they would be disregarded because talent would be admitted. They would allow the admitted talent to bypass them in promotion. So we have to have faith in our local young people. I hope the government will pay attention to this need. And we also need to pay attention to how we can cope with the need to transform different industries. For example, since the epidemic, the tourism industry has been dealt a severe blow. When we restart the tourism business, how are we going to get sufficient employees? The business sector may think that the solution lies in labor importation, and that's all for them. But the business people are in business, and they will just talk about business and pay attention to business. But what about the implication for local workforce? If we have sufficient people willing to work, but they are not well trained for the new jobs, and you import labor, you would increase the expenditure on welfare, which of course is not a problem to the business sector, but it must be faced by the government. It's just like minimum wage. The policy address refers to a comprehensive review, but the direction of that review is not clear, apart from the need to introduce a yearly review. And from 2011 up to now, we have been adjusting the minimum wage rates to catch up with inflation. Actually, it's a zero-sum game for those who are protected by minimum wage. So they are just getting an adjustment to the minimum wage to catch up with past inflation. Their living standard will not improve as a result. If we want to promote prosperity for all, we must understand what this is about clearly. Some people may think that prosperity for all is to achieve wealth across the board, and everyone should be the same. This is a misunderstanding. In the national program to achieve a common prosperity for all, we should try to make sure that wealth disparity is narrower than before, and this should be an impetus to growth rather than an impediment. Because if we get a bigger pie, it will provide an incentive for people to be part of the development, and it will have a greater incentive to do more. It will be a win-win situation for the business sector and the workforce. But if you think common prosperity for all is a burden for you, when wealth is not fairly or reasonably distributed, people will have less aspiration to make the pie bigger.
In the policy address, it's also mentioned that the only function of statutory minimum wage is to forestall excessively low wages. But when it comes to reducing wealth gap and alleviate working poverty, that's not the function of the statutory minimum wage. That is why people are getting poorer despite assistance given. The Gini coefficient was 0.539, and now it is 0.7. But if the coefficient is between 0.4 to 0.6, it is already quite alarming. The government has set down the different poverty alleviation measures, but obviously these are not targeted. That's why we have an increasing poor population. The government should tackle the root of the problem. Primary allocation of resources should be properly done. This will alleviate the work of the government in poverty alleviation. Presidency says that people are very important. If there is a prosperity for all, then it's very important to make the pie bigger and distribute it evenly. Previously, we have participated in an event organized by the Development Bureau and the Construction Council. It is an event that encourages young people to join the trade in the form of architects, engineers, or skilled workers. We support that, but most important aspect of all is to ensure that there is occupational safety and health. I will now turn to carbon neutrality. In this 1st of July speech, as well as the 20th National Congress report, Presidency talked about protecting our environment. We have resources in Hong Kong 2035. We need to move towards waste reduction and carbon neutrality. We only have Sha Ku Chiao, which turn waste into energy. We need to do more in other aspects. In order to reach carbon neutrality before 2030, the carbon emission level will be reduced by 70% compared to 2005. And in 2020, the percentage of natural gas will be increased in the fuel mix. Well, natural gas is the cleanest amongst the different types of fuels. A carbon emission is about 10 to 50% of other fuel. The government's using more natural gas. And there are views saying that a tariff should be adjusted to pay the cost of natural gas. I asked government to bear the cost. This should not be shifted towards onto the general public. With the epidemic as well as the economy in the doldrum, people are not well off. President Xi said that the country should move towards high-end development. On top of research, green industries should be encouraged. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Chow Man Kwong. Housing and land supply are the difficult areas for the government. Well, people will have to wait for as long as 6 years for public housing. And there are 253,000 PRH units that are above the age of 36. So some people live in inadequate housing. They are people living in subdivided unit. They should be moved to better housing. And there is also the redevelopment of old housing estates. I found from the policy address as well as other documents that there is the development of the Northern Metropolis. This is a glimmer of hope to resolve these problems. We need to do something about planning. We need to make sure that it is efficient and able to resolve the problems. In the policy address, there is coverage answering to what President Xi's saying that people should live in bigger flats and living in better environment. The chief executive talks about increasing efficiency, quality, quantity, and speed. Well, when it comes to developing land and housing, you need to think about compatibility with other industries. For the metropolis, or for the Northern Metropolis, it will be an area for innovation and technology development. There will be an innovative design of the city. Green living will be encouraged. Development will go hand in hand with conservation. I'd say that 2 or 3 sites should be made available because we need material. We need to manufacture materials. You need to put in place indicators relating to productivity when you award tender. This is to address the problem of shortage of materials. The productivity of the construction industry is to be enhanced. There are measures put in place. Land will be set aside for projects to store their material. We need to see more details. Don't just use existing land to say that they're new sites. Otherwise, we will not be able to meet the needs from various major projects and an aging population. All these show that the government could do better. Apart from increasing housing and land supply, the government needs to take into account the needs of the people and economic development. Apart from streamlining the administrative procedure of land formation, there can be communication groups established to increase the pace of land resumption. There are about 25% of the area in Hong Kong that's developed. Only 7% of it is residential, and there is a high percentage in that figure that is low density. In Singapore, they have a higher population density. 75% of their lands developed, and their people live in bigger houses. It enjoys a reputation of being garden of Asia. We have released a report. We have compiled figures and data, setting out the problems of anti-North development. You can draw reference from it in the development of the Northern Metropolis. The Hong Kong PSG should be updated. Say in Tin Shui Wai, a lot of facilities are built after population intake. The first population intake was 1992, but it's only in 2021 when there was the first provisional public library. For the Pingshan Tin Shui Wai Library, it will be commissioned in 2013. And in Tin Shui Wai Hospital is 2016. That means it's 24 years after the first population intake. So some of the planning standards are outdated. The construction of these facilities lag seriously behind. And the same standard applies to the whole territory. It has neglected the different needs of different districts. So there should be a regular review mechanism established for the Hong Kong PSG. Government should ditch the fragmented approach. The government should be more forward-looking so that comprehensive development and planning can be put in place for the Northern Metropolis. Mr. Robert Lee. Sustainable development and carbon neutrality are development objectives of our country. So in the policy address, it talks about sustainable and green finance. Hong Kong is to be turned into a prime investment site. Carbon market should be set up in Hong Kong, and there is a core climate providing one-stop service for transaction of related products. It's also conducive to the matching of funds. It is suggested that the Hong Kong EX should enhance cooperation with other carbon exchanges of Guangzhou and Shanghai. A better coordination mechanism should be put in place. We can make better use of our existing financial infrastructure. Cross-boundary settlement clearing of carbon products could be provided. We should encourage participation of different stakeholders. In order to enhance our green development, there should be diversification of green products, investment products. We need to expand the green finance retail market to make it more attractive. Apart from green finance, there is the Northern Metropolis. It is a key area of work. Compared to other areas, it is easier to make green planning. I suggest to the government that the Northern Metropolis should be made into a large-scale green project. Green financing should take place for this project. Green bond should also be launched. I so submit. Mr. Kingsley Wong. I will only talk about labor welfare with a priority on local manpower in this session. Well, Presidency made a very important speech. It showed us that as long as you work hard, there is a chance for you to improve your life. In the 20th National Congress report, there is support to economic development and to address deep-seated issues, and this is conducive to rejuvenation of the nation. This is the first policy address of Mr. John Lee. He pointed out that labor is an important factor of production. Laborers should be able to share the fruit of their labor. This is a new idea and a new approach. It is commendable. But how do you actually put this into practice? The government should put in place, put priority on labor and formulate relevant policies to respond to what the people ask for. And on behalf of the FTU, I would like to outline our ideas. This is the new era and the new generation of our country. We will become a strong nation. There will be rejuvenation of our nation. This is a new chapter for Hong Kong. We have to learn the spirit of the important speech of the 1st of July of presidency and the spirit of the 20th National Congress report. We need to make sure that laborers will be able to share the fruit of economic development so that we will all win.
We have 4 million people in our local workforce, so it is the Hong Kong SAR government's mission to ensure that harmony is maintained in society and people's livelihood issues can be addressed. Employment is the major livelihood issue, and it is also the foundation on which social harmony can be built. There should be the protection of labor rights so that anyone who works hard will be rewarded and will be given upward mobility. In other words, we need to help the needy. We need to provide opportunities and provide protection. For example, we need to have reindustrialization, and we need to align ourselves with GBA cities development so as to create more room for young people to move up the chain. And in terms of local workforce, priority should be given to improving the pay and condition for local workers to make sure that if you work hard, you will be rewarded accordingly so that employees can get a share of the economic benefits. In reality, however, when there is no manpower shortage, employers are reluctant to give a pay rise. They say that they should rely on market forces. But when there is a manpower squeeze, the government takes the heat of the business sector, and instead of promoting pay rise, the government imports labor, and as a result, jobs are taken away from local workers. Take the care sector as an example. The median income for local care workers is $14,000. That's a difference of $6,000 from those who work in the private care homes. And during the peak of the epidemic, 5,500 applications were received when there was a recruitment for care workers with a monthly salary of $31,115. So that's a classic example of how if you work hard, you will get rewarded accordingly. In other words, the government should give priority to local employment, improve the career progression path, improve and enhance training so as to unleash the potential of our local workforce. The labor sector acts with reason. If after implementing the measures mentioned above, there is still a manpower crunch, under the existing practice, labor can be imported under the Supplementary Labor Scheme to be approved by the Labor Advisory Board instead of enacting other labor importation schemes, circumventing the labor sector. We believe that we should create impetus for growth, and we should also promote Hong Kong's positioning as an international I&T center, so on and so forth, so as to create more upward mobility opportunities for the young people. At the same time, we should allow grassroots workers to share the economic benefits. And that means pay should be adjusted according to the economic situation. At the same time, if you work more, you get paid more, and this should be guaranteed. In other words, employees who work for 8 hours a day, according to the standard working hours, should be given a livable living wage so as to help them make ends meet. We have 800,000 people who are working poor in Hong Kong. They earn only the minimum wage. They are unable to make a living. Instead, they have to work for longer hours, up to 10, 12 hours, or they need to rely on the government's dole out under the work family allowance in order to pay for their basic expenses. Even if the minimum wage rate stands at $40, it's still below the living wage. It shows that the statutory minimum wage mechanism is no longer effective. It doesn't fulfill its objective of preventing excessively low wages. So we should make sure that workers live a dignified working life so that we can do presidency's bidding, that as long as people work hard, they will be rewarded, and that they'll be able to improve the living of themselves and their family and their families. The government should take the lead. For example, the government should scrap temporary posts and recruit permanent positions instead. The standard is $54.7, and among the 42,000 non-skilled workers employed under government service contracts, they are below this rate, so the wealth gap is widened. The policy address has taken on board our suggestions to review the statutory minimum wage rate and the outsourcing arrangement. These are all good deeds. I hope that the government will. I hope Hong Kong will see an efficient market with a capable government. In no way should we practice exploitation in the name of market mechanism. Apart from providing opportunities and helping the needy, we also need to step up occupational safety and provide protection, such as more protection for freelancers and gig economy workers. And OSH is of importance. In the past 5 years, 1,304 fatal industrial accidents occurred. In particular, 9 construction workers died of accidents at construction sites merely this summer. So it is important and imminent to improve occupational safety and health. I hope that the OSH Amendment Bill can be passed as quickly as possible to offer sufficient OSH safeguards for frontline workers. On the other hand, the government should also enhance the MPF system as quickly as possible so as to offer retirement protection for workers. The global equity market experienced fluctuations, and the for MPF scheme members, they suffered a loss of $60,000 in this year. I hope the government will review the mechanism as quickly as possible to provide another choice for workers and also review the other arrangements. All in all, the Hong Kong SAR is primarily responsible for administering Hong Kong. The government should give priority to local workers so that we have an efficient market with a capable government, so that we work on the 3 fronts I mentioned for the working class to get a share of the economic benefits, so that people's livelihoods can be improved as we abide by Presidency's instructions. Dr. Johnny Ng. According to the policy address, 30,000 units of public housing will be provided, and housing production will also be expedited so that 158,000 housing units can be produced, and the composite waiting time for public housing will be shortened to 4.5 years. This is a novel concept. According to a recent opinion poll, most respondents believe that the transitional housing initiative is not sufficient. In other words, these flats won't be ready until much later. It cannot meet the short-term needs. According to statistics, 152,000 PRH applications were received by the Housing Authority, and together with the elderly singleton applicants, altogether we have someone from 550,000 applications. It will take 10 to 20 years to meet the demand. So for younger people, they either need to wait for a long time, or they will become they won't have a roof over their head. So the housing authority should conduct a review on the applicant status and see whether we can expedite some of the applications. In President Xi's key address on the 1st of July, he categorically spoke for the young people. He said that the biggest livelihood issue facing Hong Kong people is that people want to live in a bigger flat. They want to have a bit better living environment. They want the children to receive better education, and the elderly family members to receive better care. We need to enhance a sense of happiness and well-being among our people, so that people can believe that as long as they work hard, they will be able to improve the living condition of themselves and their families. This term of government advocates a target-oriented approach. This government enhances efficiency, speed, quality, and quantity in housing production, and yet it is not quick enough. It does not address short-term demand. We're not really short of land. It's just a question of expediting the progress of putting land in the development plans. According to this, the central authorities have made it clear that they attach great importance to people's livelihood in Hong Kong. So we need to improve the housing production process. If we enlist the support of the central authorities, as we did in building mobile hospitals, I'm sure the central authorities will give support in the light public housing production. We need to work harder. We need to work faster, so as to give people a real sense of happiness, well-being, and security. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Mr. President. I was absent at the last meeting, and this is the first time I speak since then. Last time we shared our views on the 20th report to the National Congress, and this is a motion on the policy address. Because of my health condition, I'm unable to prepare a 15-minute speech, but I'd like to use up my time in this session to talk about issues close to our heart. First of all, I need to acknowledge the efforts made in preparing this policy address under the leadership of Mr. John Lee, the Chief Executive. I think that this is bold and aggressive, and this is in line with the key address delivered by President Xi on the 1st of July in Hong Kong, in which he puts forward the 4 proposals of 4 expectations. We hope that these proposals, these hopes can be realized and fulfilled. We have shorter term and longer term proposals, but it is important to show the public and show the council that the government acts in unity and a concerted effort will be made. Well, it's easier to tackle short-term problems, so I believe that the public will gradually feel more confident in the enhanced governance of the SAR government. Now, we support the SAR government in the law-based and effective governance. And then Presidency also delivered the report, a very important report of the 20th National Congress. One important chapter is the methodology and the values and the perspective of building China into a modern socialist country in all respects. We need to put people first. We need to stay confident and build strength, and we also need to uphold the concept of abiding by the systems. And there are these 6 methodologies and the 6 points in his vision. I'm sure that the SAR government will abide by these ideas. And yesterday, Mr. Luo Huining hosted a sharing session on the 20th National Congress, and he mentioned 4 key phrases. We need to strive in unity. We need to be aware of the great changes, and as we advance the cause of rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, we also need to be mindful about our unique advantages and contribute to our motherland.
President Xi and Mr. Luo Huiling said in yesterday's sharing sessions that we should refer to the spirit of the Lion Rock. And this has to do with the 4th term in the title, that we should stand united in our strive for excellence. So it's the spirit of self-reliance. Don't just ask other people to do things for you. Now the pandemic has lasted for years. Some people are concerned that people would abuse the system of CSSA, etc. In 2021, we have 12,000 families on CSSA. And after the subsequent events, we have 18,000 families on CSSA. So we are not seeing a big increase. Some would say that this is a 50% increase. But I have to tell you that in 2003, when we had SARS, 50,000 families were on CSSA. And now, after such a protracted period of the current pandemic, we are still seeing just 18,000. As the FTU has said, as long as we provide a safety net, and if we do not allow exploitation, people are willing to work. So, of course, we don't want to have a minimum wage rate that's falling behind the inflation. If we didn't have a minimum wage, then workers will have to accept low wages, however low that may be. So we have a minimum wage system. Then those who have no bargaining power will know that there's a bottom line, there's a floor to the wage that they get. We only had 6 million people in 2003, and now we have more than 7 million. And there are fewer people, fewer families on CSSA. I think that must have to do with the fact that we have minimum wage. I hope the government and the secretary will listen to FTU, because social development, economic development must be based on common prosperity for all. We are not just trying to promote welfare of a particular segment of our community. So I hope our suggestion would be considered with all carefully. Some now we have more than 110 KPIs in the policy address. Some want more, but we should give a round of applause to this step. Well, I think there should be 2 more KPIs. We should have 112 KPIs. Why don't you have a KPI on saying goodbye to subdivide units, saying that we're going to eliminate subdivider flats. It's the modern day ghetto. It's not exactly legal. How many subdivider flats have been built after submitting building plans to the buildings ordinance? Only so far, only 8,000 subdivided flats landlords have dared to register their tenancy agreements. Some of them are not adequate in any sense. There's no window in some of them. I have full confidence in you officials. As a non-engineer, I've been trying to understand how you expedite the housing production program. I'm in no position to give you brighter ideas. So I believe that in the coming 5 to 10 years, we can reverse this trend, this situation. We can tackle the problem of subdivided units. We don't need the mentality that they will be needed by someone who are still waiting for PLH. We have 90,000 light public housing plus transitional housing units, and if at the same time the property prices are stabilized, so I just don't understand we should continue to tolerate the existence of subdivided units. With our efficiency and speed of land creation, land development, we can certainly set a target date for saying goodbye to subdivided units. I think Hong Kong SAR can announce in a very honorable spirit that we are going to see the end of subdivided units. You may think that some people would need subdivided units, but what about ensuring that no children will be forced to live in subdivided units? Well, we know that there are some temporary housing units in the NT which are not popular and have not been fully utilized because of remote location. And if the Northern Metropolis plan goes ahead, we can remove all those critical obstacles. So I hope you have the courage to tackle the problem of subdivided units head on. Let's say we say goodbye to subdivided units in 2035. And Mr. Soon may be interested to know what I think about poverty alleviation. Well, I move a motion on accurate poverty alleviation measures. Well, we have to have the targeted groups for the program, which have targeted and focused policies. Let's look at Ireland. Ireland is an affluent country with 5 to 6 million people. They have a mixed mode in approaching the poverty issues. For example, 60% of medium income, and if you fall outside, you will be assisted. And there are 11 living conditions that the island will consider. If you cannot fulfill all these conditions, then you are in poverty. And they want to reduce that percentage, 6%, from 6% to 3%. So they have a very focused and targeted approach. So let's set a KPI to reduce that percentage. So instead of having hundreds of thousands of people in poverty, we are going to facilitate their upward mobility, and they are less poor in the future. For Ireland, there are 11 conditions: 2 pairs of good shoes, 1 coat that's waterproof and warm, barbecue food once a week, and can use heating continuously. In Hong Kong, we should consider whether they are living in inadequate accommodation. If you are, then it's not. You are not. You are in poverty. Just like the mainland, you have to make sure that you enjoy free and universal education. You live in the proper housing, and then we look at who are in absolute poverty, and we focus our efforts to help them. You can assign 2 particular groups for your measures. That is single-parent families on CSSA for a long period. And you should try to help them to re-enter the job market through job retraining or skills upgrading, so that they are not reliant on CSSA. I think this council will accept this as a good measure to alleviate poverty. And second, you can look at a particular district with many subdivided units, and then you just focus your efforts on helping those families with children. And then you have a team of cadres to help them improve the environment. We all know what these districts are. Well, I know this is easy, talking is easy, but we should set KPIs on poverty alleviation. We should have forceful, strong, and powerful measures, and therefore we will not fail President Xi in his expectation in regard to his expectation for Hong Kong. And how can Hong Kong help the nation in its modernization, apart from people running various enterprises? I think if we do a good job, in welfare services, then we will be able to contribute to the national development program. And that is, if we have a diversified community which is more and more affluent, then perhaps our experience can help the mainland. But the prerequisite is to review all the NGOs' operation. We cannot allow the NGOs which have committed mistakes are allowed to continue to operate, and we cannot allow them to lie flat and do nothing to make improvements. And then we'll be able to contribute a little bit to the national effort to modernize the country. Time is limited, so I support the motion of thanks. Ms. Doreen Gong. Mr. President, on land and housing supply, the policy address talks about making use of the potential of the NT land and develop the Northern Metropolis and enhance the public housing production program. It shows that the government is determined to resolve this problem. On this, I would suggest that we speed up urban renewal. We should lower the compulsory sale threshold for old buildings. In the past, there were only 10 or in the 2020, there were only a dozen or so cases, and after the threshold was lower later, in 2010 to 2011, we have 46 and 57 in 2011 and 2012. So the lowering of threshold has enabled more cases to be redeveloped and under compulsory sale. But the government has failed to review the threshold in a timely manner, although we have seen an increase in the number of redevelopment cases. For these minorities, property owners, the process is a lengthy one, and very often the experts on both sides will just argue about abstract things. But for the setting of the existing use value and the gross development value are subjects which people understand very little. And it doesn't help us that develop big tranche of existing buildings. The government should review the auction procedure and streamline the procedure so that property owners, small property owners, will be more interested in taking part. I know that the Development Bureau has come up with proposed measures to streamline the compulsory auction procedure. This is going to affect the interests of many property owners. The government should devote some time, to organize regional district seminars to listen to the property owners so that we have a fair and reasonable procedure. We can expedite the process and protect the interests of property owners. So I submit. Does any other member wish to speak? It's a good time to adjourn the meeting, but I know that the Deputy Financial Secretary has other things to attend to tomorrow.
Thank you, President. I wholeheartedly thank members for their valuable views. We will consider them seriously. A number of members have spoken about the government's efforts in land formation, light public housing, and various infrastructural projects. They have given us their recognition and support. I thank them for it. I will now speak on housing, land, and infrastructure, as well as transport. My colleagues will speak on other areas tomorrow. On land supply, for the first time, the government has announced supply prediction in the coming 10 years. The supply of brownfield site stands as 3,280 hectares. According to our preliminary estimate, the amount set aside for housing is about enough to produce 49,300 units in the public and private sector. And for industrial use, we have about 103.3 square meters. Well, we will actively farm land to meet demand. We understand that land formation is important in the support of our future economic development. For brownfield site supply, a lot of them have seen planning started. 13 hectares of them come for Northern Metropolis, and 250 hectares will come from Green Belt. Regarding land resumption, we will continue to use legislations such as Land Resumption Ordinance to resume private land for various development, including public housing and new development areas. The scale and speed of land resumption will be greatly increased. In 2022-23 fiscal year going forward, we plan in 5 years, that is, from 2020 to 2023 to 2026-27, we will resume about 500 hectares of private land. Over 50% of them are situated in the Northern Metropolis. This amount, compared to the 120 hectares resumed in the past 5 years, it's about 4 times more. Regarding large-scale development projects, in October last year, the development plan for Northern Metropolis was announced. We've immediately started our work. The development plan involves many different bureaus and departments. We have set up a new structure. There is the steering committee for the development of the Northern Metropolis. There is also the advisory committee for the Northern Metropolis, headed by the finance committee, as well as another advisory committee to overlook the development of hardware and software. And for wider use of highly efficient technology such as the MIC, the Development Bureau will support the development of storage facilities and manufacturing facilities in the Northern Metropolis. There will also be quality assurance mechanism to put in place. We aim to build a sustainable industry ecosystem. We plan that there will be specific plans and action plan put in place. In the coming 10 years, 40% of the land will be farmed and 40% of residential housing in the public and private sector will be completed. Another key area of work of ours is the Khao Yi Tao Artificial Island. This will provide 1,000 hectares of land, and it will become the third core business area in Hong Kong. It takes less than 10 minutes by transport to reach Central, so it's highly connected. We believe that the successful completion of the artificial island will greatly enhance Hong Kong's status as an international financial and trade center. Our goal is that within 2023, environmental process will start and we will commence construction shortly afterwards. Well, the chief executive has accepted the suggestions from a working group. A number of measures have been announced in the policy address to enhance the pace, quality, and efficiency of public housing supply. In the coming 10 years, that is all the way to 2022 and 2032 and 33, there will be 360,000 public housing units produced. This has surpassed the 301,000 units target set previously. With the increasing supply of public housing, we estimate that the average waiting time for public housing will continue to drop. However, as a large amount of the units will be completed in 2028 to 2033. So in the first 5 years, housing supply would be tight. As a result, the government has adopted an innovative approach. In the policy, it is mentioned that there will be light public housing. With the use of MIC within a very short time, large amount of public housing will be produced. This will be an efficient move to plug the gap. According to a prediction to 2029, that is in the coming 9 years, that is all the way to 2027-28. The amount of units generated by conventional approach will continue to climb, and there will be about 30,000 light public housing. So the overall supply will reach 158,000 units. That is for the first 5 years. There is an increase by about 50% in the compared to the original target set. We believe that applicants for public housing will only have to wait on average for about 4.5 years from the original waiting time of 6 years. On transport and traffic, the government will continue to use a visionary approach to actively take forward a number of projects. These projects will enhance the flow of people and logistics. It will also improve the connectivity with other cities in the Greater Bay Area. The government is actively pressing ahead the 2023 trunk road studies. There will be 3 road and 3 railway projects being planned. This will improve our transportation network. Traveling between Hong Kong and Shenzhen will be more efficient and convenient. Relevant work will start soon. We plan that before the end of 2030, major transportation plan will be put in place. At the same time, we will continue to implement various planned projects, including Route 11, Tsing-Yi Lantau Link, and Tuen Mun Bypass. In terms of railway, the first phase of Kutong of Northern Link, Tongchong Extension, Oyster Bay Station, Hong Shui Q Station. That is, the 5 projects will, starting from 2023, commence. We believe that via different transportation infrastructure project, it will be more convenient for commuters. And these projects will be conducive to development in peripheral areas. This will inject impetus to Hong Kong's development. I ask members to support the 2022 policy address. The Council suspends for resumption tomorrow at 9.